Welcome to True Fear Files, where we uncover the darkest and most chilling true stories that the world tried to forget. I'm your host, and tonight, we're diving into one of the most heartbreaking unsolved mysteries in American history. A story about 5 children who vanished on Christmas Eve. A story about a fire that destroyed a home but left no trace of the missing. And a story about a family that never stopped searching. This is the disappearance of the Sodder children. Imagine it's Christmas Eve. Your family is gathered together, warm and safe. The children are excited for Christmas morning. And then, in the middle of the night, your house catches fire. You manage to escape with some of your children, but 5 of them are still inside. You watch helplessly as the house burns to the ground. And when the fire is finally out, you search the ashes for their bodies. But you find nothing. No bones, no remains, nothing. Where did they go? This is the nightmare the Sodder family lived through. And it's a mystery that has haunted them and the world for nearly 80 years. Christmas Eve, 1945. Fayetteville, West Virginia. George and Jennie Sodder had built a good life for their large family. They had 10 children, ranging in age from 2 to 23. George was an Italian immigrant who had worked hard to provide for his family. They lived in a 2-story home on a hillside, and despite the challenges of the post-war years, they were happy. That night, the family celebrated Christmas Eve together. The children were excited. Presents were wrapped. Stockings were hung. It was supposed to be a perfect holiday. Around 10 p.m., Jennie Sodder put the younger children to bed. The older children stayed up a bit longer. Eventually, everyone went to sleep. But sometime around 1 a.m., Jennie woke up to the smell of smoke. The house was on fire. Jennie screamed for George. He woke up and immediately tried to get the children out. Chaos erupted. George and Jennie, along with 4 of their children, managed to escape the burning house. But 5 of the children were still inside. Maurice, 14th, Martha, 12th, Louis, 9th, Jennie, 8th, and Betty, 5th. George tried desperately to get back inside. He ran to the stairs, but they were already engulfed in flames. He ran outside to get a ladder he kept near the house, but the ladder was gone. He tried to move one of his trucks closer to the house so he could climb on top and reach the second-floor windows. But neither of his trucks would start, even though both had been working fine the day before. George ran to a neighbor's house and begged them to call the fire department, but the neighbor's phone wasn't working. Another neighbor tried to call, but their phone was also out of order. By the time the fire department finally arrived, it was too late. The house had burned to the ground, and the 5 children were gone. In the days following the fire, investigators sifted through the ashes and rubble, searching for the remains of the 5 missing children. But they found nothing. No bones, no teeth, no remains of any kind. The fire chief quickly concluded that the fire had burned so hot that the children's bodies had been completely incinerated, reduced to ash. But George and Jennie didn't believe it. George had been in the coal business. He knew how hot a fire needed to be to completely destroy a human body. House fires don't burn that hot, and even in the most intense fires, bones and teeth remain. The fire had burned for only 45 minutes before collapsing. How could 5 children vanish without a trace? George and Jennie began to suspect something far more sinister. They believed their children had been kidnapped, and the fire had been set to cover it up. Strange things had happened in the weeks and months before the fire. In October, a life insurance salesman visited the Sodder home. George rejected his sales pitch. The man grew angry and made a disturbing statement. He told George, "Your house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed." George dismissed it as an empty threat. But after the fire, those words took on a chilling new meaning. Then, just days before Christmas, a strange man was seen watching the Sodder children as they came home from school. Jennie saw him standing near the house, staring at the kids. When she asked what he wanted, he didn't answer. He just walked away. On the night of the fire, several witnesses reported seeing a man throwing fireballs onto the roof of the Sodder house. Others reported seeing a strange car parked along the road near the house, with people inside watching the fire. And perhaps most disturbing of all, the fire chief who investigated the scene was later caught stealing a piece of electrical wiring from the Sodder property, a piece that might have been evidence of arson, but he destroyed it. George and Jennie hired a private investigator. They put up billboards along highways across the country, displaying photos of their 5 missing children and offering a reward for any information. For years, they received tips and sightings. Some seemed credible, others were clearly hoaxes. In 1968, nearly 23 years after the fire, Jennie received a letter. It was postmarked from Kentucky and had no return address. Inside was a photograph of a young man, around 30 years old. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie. Elil Boys, a 90132. Louis was one of the missing children. Jennie was convinced the man in the photo was her son, now grown. But when private investigators tried to trace the letter, they hit dead ends. The detective who was hired to follow up on the lead took the family's money and was never heard from again. To this day, the identity of the man in the photograph remains unknown. What really happened to the Sodder children? Over the decades, several theories have emerged. Theory 1, they died in the fire. This is the official explanation. The fire was so hot and destructive that the children's remains were completely incinerated. But experts have disputed this. Crematoriums use temperatures of 1400 to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit for hours to reduce a body to ash. A house fire rarely exceeds 1200 degrees and burns for a much shorter time, and even then bones remain. Theory 2, they were kidnapped. This is what George and Jennie believed until their deaths. They suspected that someone, possibly connected to organized crime, or a grudge against George for his outspoken criticism of Mussolini during World War II, orchestrated the kidnapping. The fire was set as a cover. The children were taken and possibly sold or hidden. Several reported sightings over the years seem to support this. Theory 3, they were taken by someone with a personal vendetta. George had made enemies. He was vocal in his political opinions, and as an Italian immigrant during wartime, he faced discrimination. Some believe someone targeted his family as revenge. Theory 4, a tragic accident. Perhaps the children did die in the fire, and their remains were somehow missed or disturbed during the cleanup. But this theory doesn't explain the missing ladder, the trucks that wouldn't start, or the strange behavior of officials after the fire. George Sodder spent the rest of his life searching for his children. He traveled across the country, following leads, interviewing witnesses, and pleading for answers. he never found them. George died in 1969. Jennie continued the search alone until her death in 1989. They never got closure. They never knew what happened to Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty. In 1950, George bulldozed the site of the fire and covered it with dirt. He built a memorial on the property with photos of the 5 missing children. The billboard remained along Route 16 for decades, a haunting reminder of a family's loss. Some of the surviving Sodder children have continued the search, hoping that modern technology, DNA, or a deathbed confession might finally reveal the truth. To this day, the disappearance of the Sodder children remains unsolved. Were they taken? Did they die in the fire? Are they still out there, living under different names, unaware of their true identities? We may never know. But one thing is certain. On Christmas Eve, 1945, 5 children vanished, and their family never stopped looking for them. This is one of the most heartbreaking mysteries in American history. A story of loss, hope, and the unbreakable bond of a family that refused to give up. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more chilling true crime stories like this. And let me know in the comments, what do you think happened to the Sodder children? Until next time, stay safe and hold your loved ones close.